One thing you need to be careful for as well is people purposely hiding from your flash. Breach footsteps are notably quite loud and distinct. So whenever I hear a breach running, for example, if I hear a breach running, I will, say I hear a breach running up here, I'll purposely hide or I'll purposely look away. Hey guys, just a quick reminder that I do have a Valorant competitive fundamentals course, which will help you understand all the fundamental aspects of competitive that will help you climb, understand the game at a deeper level, and ultimately rank up and improve your overall mechanical skill. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Hey guys, so in today's video, I'm going to be giving you 5 in-depth Breach tips that can help you master Breach a little more quickly. Now, Breach is an incredibly strong character, especially on particular maps like Fracture. The reason Fracture is so good for Breach is because basically every single one of his abilities is basically made better just because of how the map is laid out or how the sites are set up. And so what this means is Fracture is a very good map for me to show you how his abilities can be used. So first we're going to talk about Aftershock, which is his first ability. It's this one. It's the one where you throw it and then it basically just explodes a few times. And so I can think of a couple use cases for this, like how and when and why you'd want to be using this. So one, it's really good to either stop or kill planters, especially if you know that someone's stuck in a position like this. Again, this is why this is such a good map for Breach, is because you can use Aftershock on an area like this. And it's just really good. So this is either going to force them to the left where you can shoot them, or it's going to force them to the right behind this box, which is in fact spammable. So, you know, if you know that they're planting behind here, you Aftershock it, you can hold here, and then if they don't come, you spam this, and then they're basically dead. So that's one example of how you can use Aftershock, and that's again for the spike plant. So remember to use Aftershock for the spike plants. Or if someone's already planted, again, this is another reason why this map is just so good for Breach. If they plant here, which they often do, you have an Aftershock for this, which is usually just going to be a free kill. Even if it's after they planted and you know they're still on this side, you just do this and you hold and make sure that they can't make it across, right? And so I don't know if you have to angle it perfectly so that they can't hide like right here or something, but usually you're going to be able to see them at least a little bit and you can shoot them. Now, this is for the plant. You can do this on a lot of maps as well. But other scenarios where you can use this is, say you're, I don't know, retaking or say whatever. But another way you can use this is if someone's trapped in some place. So obviously they're pretty trapped behind here and over here on B, but outside of the spike, like if they're trapped behind this wall and you know they're trapped there, one, spam them, right? You don't really need to use this ability. You can just spam them and get them out. But if you know that they're stuck on the right here, which is not really spammable, this is an example where you could use the Aftershock. And so that's one example on defense where you can use it to check for, not check, like if you know someone's trapped, you can just use it. Another example might be right here. These are very simple examples. Let's say we're attacking though. So an example where we could use Aftershock, you want to use Aftershock as you're pushing in, typically on attack, or you can save it for the spike post plant. For example, if the spike is planted like right here, you can throw it through the wall here, and that's just going to be completely broken. It's kind of like a free lineup that you don't actually have to have a lineup for. Or you can throw this as we're running up, or behind here, for example, and then we run up, and then, you know, if someone swings us, then we get a free kill, because they have to swing us, they have to run. And the reason you want to do that as you're running up, or as your team is pushing site, is because it's just going to give you extra momentum, right? Like, it just allows you, so you don't have to clear that as you're running up, and you know it's pretty much safe. But saving it for the spike is especially really nice. But if there's a situation where, I don't know, even like there's so many situations where this ability is good. Like you need to plant, it's 1v3, and you know there's one tower. You tap the spike, and if they run through, you kill them. You know, it's just really good. So those are some of the main scenarios you can use them. You can really force people into that ability, and it's very difficult to play against when done properly. So moving on to Breach's next ability, it's called Flashpoint, and this is his classic flash. He used to have 3 of them, now he has 2. This ability is just completely annoying to play against. It's pretty hard to turn from. I would argue it's one of the harder flashes to turn from in the game. This is because it can be thrown through any wall, basically, that's not too extremely thick. Like, you can't throw it through this, fortunately, but you can throw it through this, which is a pretty thick chunk of wall, and this will flash people, and you can flash specifically for teammates. Now, I want to mention a couple pretty basic things first. The first is that you can actually see where your flash is going to go on the minimap. That's what this circle means. Basically, like the center of the circle is where it's going to be. And then I guess that's kind of, I don't know what the circle is supposed to signify, but that's where your flash will go through the wall. And that can be very useful. Another thing is be careful whenever you're flashing around corners, because you can actually accidentally flash yourself. And if you can accidentally flash yourself, it's even easier to accidentally flash teammates. So make sure you're communicating where are you gonna flash as breach, what's your intention to flash, when are you gonna flash, stuff like that. Let your team know so that they're not like, you know, getting angry whenever they dash out and then you full flash them twice and stun them and breach ult them. You're like, oh, sorry, I didn't see you. You know, try to communicate a little bit. Whenever you breach flash, also try to flash higher or in positions that you think will flash more enemies and that you think enemies will have a harder time turning away from. For example, flashing down here. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Flashing down there is not great because this box covers from these people, and if you flash up here instead, it will actually flash people from back here in certain scenarios. So, for example, all the way up here, you know, you can go pretty high up. This will flash people far. So, I'm guessing there is some range to the flash, meaning people that are like super far away probably are not going to be flashed by it. But breach flash is really annoying. It's really good for pushing into sites, and yeah, as long as you're not flashing teammates, it should be pretty easy. Now, let's talk about like playing time with flash. There's just one thing that came into my mind. So let's say like the spike is planted here. If you breach flash in any rank other than like Radiant, people are not going to be turning away from this. Even people in Radiant are probably not always going to be turning away from this. I can turn away from this, but I'm not always consistent with it. But let's say that there's someone, like the spike's right here, it's a 1v2 or it's a 1v1. Someone taps the spike, you throw flash, you don't need to peek because the odds of them actually having turned away from the flash and still sticking the spike are pretty slim. So you flash and you flash again, and then again you have all these other abilities you can use to keep them off the spike. So you can really play time very well as breach. For example, you don't really need to flash and peek, although you can if you really want to do that. But basically just trying to show you how you can play time or how you can stall very easily with breach and his abilities. And again, that ties into Aftershock as well, which we already talked about. Flash is about the same. Another completely busted flash you can do is up here for your team. Now, imagine your team is like over here and here, and they're looking forward. This means that this flash will not flash them, and this flash flashes everyone. This is disgusting. What are they going to do about that? Yet, many breaches don't flash there because a lot of breaches on this map do play A, which makes a lot of sense. With this ability, we'll talk about that in just a minute. But this is a crazy flash for tower, and your teammates can play off of that. So basically, flash for teammates. Make sure you're not flashing, you know, don't flash yourself on accident. Don't especially flash teammates. Flash for info, which can basically mean if you flash and then someone starts shooting or running or something, that means they're probably blind. Those are some good ways to use Breach's Flash. Hopefully this makes sense. Breach's Flash is extremely strong. Moving on to the next ability for Breach, it's called Fault Line. I've moved my face cam, so forgive me for a second. I want you guys to see the minimap and just how broken this is. So here, this ability is called Fault Line. It's your signature ability, meaning it recharges for free. You don't buy it. And so you can see, if you play on this map, it's very common for Breach to stun this. I don't know if it's like this in every rank, but in my rank, you can see this. The reason it's so good is because it just stuns everything. So if we walk up here, you can see this just stuns the whole corridor. So you really have to make an effort to avoid this. You have to be like, yo team, let's wait for the breach stun and let's not walk up here. Now in high ranks, they stun every single round like this pretty much, and you kind of have to just be prepared for it. But the stun itself isn't anything crazy. It slows you, it makes you shoot a little bit slower, and it makes it a little bit harder for you to see. But that's not really where this ability shines. Where it shines is obviously that slows you down. But where this ability shines is whenever you stun like that and then you have a raise throw nade, or you have some other combination of an ability with this ability, with Breach's Fault Line. That's where this ability really shines, because this right here is basically a guaranteed stun or multiple stuns if you time it correctly. And if you have a teammate combine some sort of like nade with it, then it's just free damage at the very least. Now, this ability can be used for other situations as well. You don't always have to use it right there. For example, let's say instead of doing that, you hear like, oh, it's fast B. So now we can use this to retake. So this ability can be really good for retaking because we can throw it again from behind walls, but you can also stun teammates, so be very careful. For example, let's say your teammate's like in tower or something, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna stun the plant. I'm stunning the plant. And So the cool thing about this ability as well is it reaches really far. The width is pretty wide, and you can also stun like high. Let's say that there might be an enemy in tower. You get stun like this, it goes up. Like it went from down here to all the way up here, and that stuns people. So again, communication with pretty much every ability on Breach is very important most of the time. And so, because like you can be back here, but because you don't want to be stunning out in the open, right? You want to be stunning behind the wall. And since you're stunning behind the wall, it's better for teammates to play off of this, because if you, by the time you stun, then by the time you run all the way up here, they're gonna already be unstunned. So it's better to have teammates to play off of this ability than for you yourself to play off of it in most situations. Now there are some situations again where you can stun like this, and then you can peek off of it. And then if they're stunned, obviously it's going to be easier for you to kill them because they shoot much slower, they're slow, and they probably feel like they're at a massive disadvantage because they are. And so there's like a little bit of a mental aspect to this as well. But again, if you're playing on B for some reason as Breach, you can stun like this. This is like, you play from the same place of the flash here, so this is kind of broken. Like this whole thing, it's just really, how are they going to avoid that? They have to basically be in this corner, and then again, if they are, you can have Raze like nade it, or you can have something, you can have your Aftershock thrown right here. And yeah, so that's Fault Line. Fault Line, it's your signature ability, it's free, it recharges. I would recommend combining it with other abilities. That's how you really make it shine. And try to throw it in areas where people can't avoid it. Try to use it whenever you're retaking, for example, or whenever you're pushing into a site. If we're retaking A, we can stun this whole area on the left here, or we can stun default, whichever one, as long as our team's running up with it. You know, we peek them like this. This is smoked off. Whoever's here is just dead because, well, they're stunned. Unless they get a pretty lucky one tap, well, they're stunned. And then on attack, it's kind of the same thing. You can stun, like you can try to stun from behind walls so you're not being exposed, because you move pretty slowly when you do this, and you can just get one tapped, so be careful. So you can stun wherever here, wherever you think they're most likely to play, or wherever they have been playing in previous rounds. But yeah, make sure you do it as you push. Make sure you combine abilities. For Breach's last ability is ult. It's called Rolling Thunder, and most of you are, I'm sure, aware of what this ult does. It can be very scary or very difficult to play against. If you just look at the minimap, again, it's just absolutely absurd to me how much this actually covers, so it can be really difficult to play against this ult, and especially considering, again, this ult you can throw from like low ground, and this is gonna hit all of high ground like this. So you can see, not only can I hit sight, but I can hit all of tower. Let's see what this looks like.
My ult's ready.
Yeah, right. And so like, it's basically, it does the same thing as a stun, except it also knocks you up into the air, meaning for a split second, enemies can, you know, you can't shoot because you're mid-air, but usually you're not going to have to worry about enemies pushing up that quickly, but you're going to be stunned, and people are going to have a strong advantage on you if, again, combination is important here. So if you ult as Breach and then your team waits like 20 seconds before they push in, that's not really going to work. You need to actually have teammates pushing in right after you ult. Obviously not soon enough so that they get hit by the ult as well. But let's see if I can demonstrate this. So like this.
My ult's ready.
You're running up like this, and you know, you're shooting people right as the ult is hitting. So that's what you really want to do, because it gives you a massive advantage. And there's not really much enemies can do to counter this. But for example, this position of ulting is really strong, because you can do it from low ground and it goes all the way up to high ground. And a lot of people in low ranks won't expect an ult like that, but again, this map, on most maps, this ult is very strong because it covers the majority of a site. As you can see, this ult just eats the whole site right here. Like, there's nothing that they can do except run away before the ult hits them or whatever. And by the time that they run away, you can smoke this off, you can get on the spike, and you can at least stick it to half or so, and it just gives you a lot of momentum, a lot of pressure.
My ult's ready.
And so yeah, keep that in mind. And again, combine, make sure that you're communicating this. Make sure you're not just Breach ulting without saying a single thing to your team, because basically, I'm realizing this now, Breach's whole kit requires a fair amount of communication with your teammates if you're not saying when you're using which abilities, except with the exception of Aftershock, because Aftershock can actually be used semi on your own. It doesn't necessarily need to be combined with a teammate, although it can be. However, flashes, fault line, and your ult all really need to be communicated to your team. Like, guys, okay, you guys ready? Let's retake. Are we retaking A? All right, I'm ulting A. 3, 2, 1, ulting, and then like, you know, make sure your team's in position. If your team's all the way over here and you're asking like, are you ready? They're probably not ready. Whereas if your team's like right here, right there, and you got one here, a drop as well, then they're probably ready because they're all waiting. I mean, hopefully they're waiting. They're probably not because, you know, you're probably not immortal. Maybe you are, but you want to get your teammates to wait, and after you ult, then they can run out, and that's where this ult really shines because again, the stun only lasts for so long, and so if you ult, it's also okay to ult solo. This ult can basically clutch free rounds for you. Especially when you know where an enemy is, like if it's a 1v1 and you're over here, the spike has been planted, and you know that the enemy is main, you can just ult and then just defuse the spike, and then you win the round because they're slow. They're so slow that unless they're really close here, you just like the spike and you win. So yeah, and so guys, I'm gonna move on to the final tip now. There's not much more for me to say about the ult. It's just really strong. It covers a massive area, and make sure you're communicating with it. Have good timing with it. Don't use it whenever necessarily when they're always pushing. You can use it, save it for retake. You can save it for next round if you need to. If your team's down like 4 people, then you know, don't use the ult. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but you can think of it like if it's 4v2, you might want to save it because you probably don't really need it, hopefully, unless you really think you do need it, then you can use it. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the 5th and final tip. Okay, so lastly, I want to talk a little bit more about Breach Flash and a couple more nuances with how you can use it and just a few minor details. So look how far this flash can go. Look how far this goes. This goes extremely far. Now, one thing worth noting is this flash actually does take a second to travel. So if you're like point blank to a wall, it's going to flash instantly. But if you're this far away, it's going to take a second to blind. Now, this might give enemies a little bit more time to react, but not much because you can't really fully hear it until it goes and hits the wall. But they might be able to hear it as it's traveling, so keep that in mind. Another thing is you can double flash, especially whenever your team wants to push something. Again, just make sure you're not flashing teammates, so you can flash like this, and then you can flash again. And again, it's good to flash high, because you're actually not really going to be flashing yourself if you do this. So, like this, but you're going to be flashing everybody on the other side here. The reason it doesn't flash you is because it's not on your screen, because it's so high up, right? So, now, I don't know actually if that's going to work. But that works because it's on this side. I said that might not work because it's all the way on top of the box. But you can flash here, and it's still going to be like very visible to them. And that's not going to be flashing at all. And you can do this in a variety of areas around the map, for example, like up here. You can just peek with it. Typically, when they see that, they're going to try to turn away instead of just standing there holding the angle. So you can peek as you're flashing, or you can just wait for a second and then peek after the flash pops. Yeah, one thing you need to be careful for as well is people purposely hiding from your flash. Breach footsteps are notably quite loud and distinct. So whenever I hear a breach running, for example, if I hear a breach running, I will, like, say I hear a breach running up here, I'll purposely hide, or I'll purposely, like, look away for a second until he pops a flash, and then I'll look back. And that's just out of instinct. So good players will actually do that. They'll play, it's called anti-flash. If you guys have never heard of that, it basically means whenever someone or everyone on your team is turning away from a flash because they know that the flash is inevitable. Now, obviously, you don't know for sure if the breach is going to flash, but if you hear breach footsteps stomping, like, you can hear that. I don't know if you guys knew that, but there are actually footsteps. I might make a video on this. There are specific footsteps for each character, which actually allows you to identify them. Some agents are a little more identifiable than others, like Breach and Brim, for example, or they have heavy footsteps. But I'm pretty sure you can identify most agents in the game with just footsteps alone. So anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about this guide or Breach down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.